under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let's go ahead and start with roll call. To my right, please.
Commissioner Von der Schmidt, present.
Commissioner Combs, present.
Commissioner Souza present.
Commissioner Berg, present.
All right, we have a quorum of 4. Good. All right, the next item is the consent agenda. All matters listed within the consent agenda have been distributed to each member of the Planning Commission for study. These items are considered to be routine and will be enacted upon by one motion with no separate discussion. If separate discussion is desired on an item from either the Planning Commission or from the floor, that item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. All right, so we have one item on the consent agenda. Are there any items that any members want to remove from the consent agenda? Are there any items any member of the public would like to remove from the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion to approve the minutes from as written for the meeting on September 23rd, 2024, made by Combs and Burke. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 4-0.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to just interrupt real quickly because the regular agenda, hopefully you all have the revised agenda before you for the regular agenda tonight. Staff has added an item number 5 to that agenda. Just for disclosure, this is a routine item that we usually bring to you in the November meeting, but because we have no applications right now to consider in November, that's why we're bringing your 2025 schedule before you here at the October meeting. So it got pushed up a month from when it normally appears, and that wasn't planned back in when these applications came in, but because the November agenda right now looks like we'll have nothing on it, we felt we could push this up to you. So we'll be presenting, or I'll be presenting that item at the end of the regular agenda. So that's all I have. Sorry to interrupt you on that.
Oh, no, thanks for the clarification. All right, so now we're moving to the regular agenda. The number 1 item is the New Life Church rezoning 24-03-01. It's a public hearing. Staff, do you have a presentation?
Oh, thank you, Jesse. Good evening, Commissioners. Again, this is item 1, New Life Church rezoning 24-303-01. The subject property includes approximately 2.6 acres of land located on the east side of Moonlight Road, approximately 50 feet south of the intersection of Grand and Moonlight. The property was part of an annexation back in 1978 per Ordinance 1370 and was zoned to C1 Central Business District. The eastern portion of this rezoned area was platted for single-family houses in 1998. And several years later, in 2006, the western portion of this area was platted for the New Life Church. And as you can see from the surrounding zoning map up on your boards now, the rezoning area that is subject of this application is surrounded by residentially compatible uses. And as the surrounding zoning depicts on the map, there is single family to the north, south, and east, and then the school to the west has maintained its agricultural zoning. This was, as you can see from the zoning map, this area, Zone C1, is kind of an anomaly because C1 zoning district is usually designated for our central business district or downtown. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out how this property got zoned C1. I know there was a study that was done back in 1998 by the staff, and they called it mystery zoning, was the name of the file. So, what better time than the present to get this changed? So, the city has determined that in order to bring this area to a more suitable district, it should be rezoned to R1 single-family residential. Also, as you can see from the map, part of the C1 zoning does go into the residential property to the south of the church. It also includes 2 houses in Cottage Creek subdivision, which really could present a problem if one of these property owners ever wanted to sell their house. Title work would come back and they'd actually probably put a block on. So really this is trying to resolve an issue. I was able to talk with not only the church, but the property owner to the south and one of the property owners over in Cottage Creek. I tried to reach out to one of the other property owners, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get a hold of them. So if they're here tonight, I apologize. Staff findings, the rezoning of this area brings multiple properties into conformance with the Land Development Code. The proposed R1 zoning is more compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods, and then the comprehensive plan depicts this area for residential. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning from C1 district to R1 district. In the suggested motion.
Okay. Since this is a public hearing, so we'll now open the public hearing. If anyone would like to comment on this item, please come forward and state your name and address for the public record. Individuals are allotted 3 minutes, or an individual representing a group is allotted 7 minutes. Is the applicant present?
I believe the application is primarily coming from the city on this one. So
Okay.
for the zoning piece, the conditional use permit, there will be an applicant element to that. But because this was a remnant piece of zoning, as Bob referred to it, the city is the one that's bringing this forward for the change.
All right. Do we have any questions to the staff?
Yeah, we should open the public hearing, just double check that there's nobody
Oh.
wishing to speak, and then we can close the hearing and then go to
Okay.
questions.
Anybody else wishing to speak? Okay. So, you get a motion?
Take a motion to close the
Can I
public.
get a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
All right, so I got a motion to close the public hearing by Bonderschmidt and Berg. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the motion passes 4-0. Any commissioners have any questions to the staff?
I go. Excuse me. I'm wondering how this impacts the 2 property owners now, not just when they go to move or go to sell their home.
This would be probably considered a legal non-conforming structure right now. So if something happened, fire, tornado, or something blew it over, they would be able to reconstruct in on the same site on the same foundation per se. So not really a huge problem for the property owner. The problem is that really the subdivision, when it was platted, this should have changed because that subdivision was platted after the zoning district was created. Does that make sense? So actually it might not be a legal non-conforming structure, Dave. This actually may be a problem if their houses were destroyed. If the city was going to follow the strict regulations of the zoning code, unless this was a central business district use, it would not be able to be rebuilt, would it?
Yeah, you have several problems. Bob's right in the situation of nonconformance versus conformance. It would be judged according to the zoning district, not the actual use. And so even if, in the case of the two houses to the east in particular, if they wanted to do an addition or they wanted to do any kind of improvements to their area, we would be looking at the setbacks that are required within the commercial zoning district. There's just a lot of issues that could conflict with the rest of the neighborhood there. So this is really, it's almost a housekeeping item in the sense it's better for the property owners and the uses they currently have. Because as Bob mentioned, under those non-conforming scenarios, if there was something comes through and destroys these buildings, there could be questions as to what rights they really have to build to what they could do. Typically, under the non-conforming, they would have the right to rebuild to the level that was there prior to that happening. But they'd have to do that within a certain specified period of time, and there'd be limitations as to what they could do. This would remove that, allow it to be redeveloped as residential properties. For the church property, it's kind of interesting because the zoning splits the building. So if you look at the actual church and you look at where that red box that Bob was showing kind of goes over it, where it comes to that church building, how that building can be used gets impacted. So in one part of it, it may allow some things by right that aren't allowed in another part of the same building. How do you enforce that? How do you work through that? So it creates a series of really regulatory issues for all the property owners involved.
And we'll get into that on the item number 2.
That was my only question.
Okay.
I do have several. Maybe just the first one's clarification. So there's 4 properties. Only 2 of them or all 4 of them are part of the rezoning request?
So the rezoning request can be made by the city. It does not need the individual property owners to apply for it. So this is actually what Dave mentioned earlier. This is a city-sponsored rezoning petition.
Sure. And it's for all 4 of the properties?
That is correct. This, if you look at the staff report, it talks about this being 2.6 acres.
Yes.
So this actually runs across that C1 district, goes into all 4 of those.
I see.
It doesn't include the entire 4 parcels. It just includes a portion of those 4 parcels.
Literally the red box.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. The legal description that'll be in the ordinance is following the parameters or the boundaries of that red box.
So that must not be typical.
It's not typical at all, and it's not encouraged.
Okay.
It's not a good situation when you have properties that are split zoned like that.
Right.
It creates a series of problems for the property owners at the end of the day.
Okay.
That are incompatible. As Bob mentioned earlier, with the C1 in particular, our sense is as staff, when this was C1, was probably under an older zoning code. And so the C1 may have meant something completely different as far as the level of commercial, but when the new code was done in 2016, so when that was done in 2016, that C1 zoning became our downtown district zoning. So this is really not where we would want the C1 zoning for a variety of reasons.
Okay. And maybe it's just semantics, but the property to the south, and the lot, the plat to the south is already zoned R1, at least according.
Except for a very small sliver. You can't, maybe on your screen
Yeah.
you can see, there's a very small sliver. So the lot to the south is kind of it's got like a hatchet shape to it.
Correct.
It comes up along there at Moonlight, and it drops back and
Correct.
it levels out. So, there's a better,
Yep.
better view there. So you see where the white line is, where the property boundary is, the red line is where the zoning line is. So there's a portion of that
Oh,
bottom
I-
property
I
that's.
see that now.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I
Yep.
didn't realize. Well,
Yeah.
first off, the red box threw me off.
Yeah.
I mean, normally the red box follows the other property line.
Correct,
So,
correct. But
anyhow.
in this case, that's what's so strange about it. Bob really did a good job when this came up, and again, he'll mention it more in the second one, but Bob did a good job of trying to research this and figure out why this exists the way it does, because it really doesn't follow any of the property boundaries that exist today.
Yeah.
And so we did our best to try to figure it out.
Sure.
And because of the ramifications on all four of these properties, that's where we had to go with more of a city-sponsored approach to this, because this really is an oddity, and it really shouldn't be this way for a variety of reasons. All four of these properties, it creates difficulties for.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you for the clarification on the red box.
Yeah.
It really answers everything.
Yeah.
No other questions.
No questions. Hopefully you'll never see one of these again, but we will not neither confirm or deny that there aren't more out there, but
When you
hopefully
start-
we won't see many
When you have
more.
to zoom in to start seeing where
Yeah.
it crosses lines.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
All right, so since we don't have any other questions or comments, I'd like to extend a motion for this item.
I'll make that motion. After review of application 24-303-01, a rezoning for the New Life Church and several single-family houses, and staff report dated October 23rd, 2024, the Planning Commission recommends the governing body approve the request to rezone 2.6 acres from C1 Central Business District to R1 Single Family Resident District.
I'll check at that motion.
All right, so I have a motion to approve the New Life Church rezoning made by Combs and second by Wunderschmidt. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries 4-0. All right, so the next one on the regular agenda is the Sunny Steps Daycare 24-305-02, the conditional use permit. Staff, do you have a presentation for us?
I do. This is item 2, Sunny Steps Daycare. It's a conditional use permit, 24-305-02. And I've got another red box for you.
I get this one.
This box actually follows the property lines. So, property includes 2.6 acres of land located on the east side of Moonlight Road. Well, I think I got the wrong notes on that one, but that's okay. It's basically includes the old vacant New Life Church and extends all the way over to the backside of Cottage Creek, and on the north, on the south is that residential property that we were just discussing. Staff findings: within the Land Development Code, a daycare center is an allowed use within the R1 district, but requires a conditional use permit. The proposed CUP for this property is proposing on utilizing the existing building, which is the old New Life Church on the property. With the possible exception of an outdoor play area, no additional site-specific conditions are necessary to meet the proposed use. The proposed use is compatible and in character with the surrounding zoning and land use. Staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit with the conditions in the suggested motion.
anyone would like to comment on this item, please come forward and state your name and address for the public record. Individuals are allotted 3 minutes, or individual representing a group is allowed 7 minutes. Is the applicant present?
Bob was the applicant here.
Yes, she is. She's present.
State your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Amber Peterson. Do you want the business address or? Okay, 17935 South Moonlight Road.
I don't know if the applicant has a specific presentation, but if you have questions for the applicant, you certainly could
Oh.
ask them now if you want to.
Okay. Let's go ahead and start.
The first question I had was approximately how many children do you expect to have at the daycare? I know there's state issues on your license, but it's just approximately.
Yes, right now we are licensed for 54 children. Thank you.
Just so, yeah, so if you're allowed to have 54 kids, how many employees do you have to, how does it work?
Yeah, currently we do have 10 employees to cover that 54. There might be an additional need for 1 or 2 more to cover lunch breaks on what we would call a float or a support position.
Thank you.
Of course.
No questions for me.
Any others wishing to speak? Any questions? All right, so can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Yeah, I'd like to propose a motion to close the public hearing portion.
I'll second that.
All right, so the public hearing is closed, made by Wunderschmidt and seconded by Combs. Sorry. Okay. Just Combs. All right, so,
Just need to take the vote on that.
Oh, okay.
Yep. You've got the motion to
You've got the
close the
motion.
public hearing,
okay.
so go ahead and ask for the vote. Those in favor?
All right, so those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries 4-0.
So now we need to, if there's any planning commission discussion or questions for the staff on this, to take that, and then you can vote on the motion.
Okay.
I'll propose the motion. So,
I do have a question.
oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
I have a question, sorry.
Go ahead.
No.
Well, the only question I have is I noticed the last conditional use permit we did was for Nice Ice Baby. It was for 5 years. This is for 10 years. Is there a reason for the difference?
I don't know if there's a specific difference. I'll let Bob come up here if there is one. I think usually with these kinds of items, what we default to is some of the licensing procedures, and if we believe everything's gonna fall into place. Obviously, when we're looking at this, we're suggesting that the operation is allowed per their state licensing. So if for some reason that licensing changes, there may be the possibility that they have to come back for a conditional use permit, no matter what the term is that we place on this. Generally, I would say the 10 years was probably at the discussion with staff and the applicant as to what would work best in this scenario. So, Bob?
Yeah, typically for something like the Nice Ice Baby, which is a temporary structure, this is a more permanent structure. It's the church. So just like what we did with the Mark Industries up off of Center Street, which is a manufacturing operation that had to have a conditional use permit, we went ahead and went with 10 years on that.
So the Nice Ice Baby was an exception, or they're just different considerations depending on the conditional use permit.
Yeah, really it's different considerations because of the nature of the structure that the businesses are going into.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Nice Ice Baby was kind of I won't call it a mobile use, but it was a temporary structure that's brought out seasonally. And so it's there. So a lot of times on those types of uses, we'll recommend a shorter time frame. In this case, I don't believe, the applicant may be able to help with this, I don't believe there's an issue with any kind of financing or anything, but many times when you have a permanent structure and a use like this, if they're being financed somehow, the finance requirements prefer a longer term on these things versus a short term, because they don't want to loan money out or, support a business that might disappear in a year or two because the term runs out in a conditional use permit and it's not approved again or renewed again. So I do know that's many times a consideration that staff has in a lot of these situations. This is a type of use, though, that's pretty much limited to the footprint of the building that's already existing there. And the other element of it is if they're going to make significant changes, they're going to have to re-up their state license. Part of the state license procedures, they have to come to us to check the zoning. So unlike some other uses, there's that state licensure element that triggers us being notified if there's significant changes from the parameters of this approval. The staff at that time can look at that and go, okay, this is a significant enough a change that it has to come back to Planning Commission for reconsideration. So that
Okay.
The state licensure really kind of helps us in kind of making sure that they operate within the parameters that they're allowed to.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
I have just a couple of points. And you may have actually just touched on this. Are the state licenses required to get the CUP, or is the CUP required, or one of
Yes.
the requirements to get the license?
Yes and yes. So this applicant can attest to this. Yeah, come on up. So when this was caught because of the rezoning and everything else, the zoning that was in there were actually a couple options that were open to the applicant, but the applicant is required by the state, because of the size of their operation and the way they operate, they have to get a state license. Their application for that state license requires that the city signs off on zoning compatibility. So she had to come in to us. This is how this all got caught, was because she brought her application in. I believe you already had an arrangement to use the church building and to do things with the
Correct.
church.
Yes.
And so that's when we had to stop and go, well, we can't sign off on that until we get this all cleared up. So that's been a yes to that part of the question. The other part of the question is, because of the option that was chosen to clean this up, because this district went over multiple properties, the CUP is required to bring it into compliance with the zoning. So it's a double yes answer.
Just to
Go ahead.
clarify too, the state has allowed us currently, knowing that this has been kind of a fun mess, to go ahead and have our license. That's why we have the license for 54 currently, pending all of the stuff that is happening tonight and with City Council next month.
Okay. Well, perfect. So a couple of questions, and you, by all means, you may take a
Oh,
seat.
it's
My next question, I don't think is to you. It would be to staff. Okay, I think I heard a size change. What else? What other changes would dictate revisiting the CUP?
Couple different things could happen. State law could change on some of the regulations. So for instance, when you ask the question about number of employees, I do believe in this license situation, there are ties to the number of children and how many employees need to be on site as part of that process. So if state laws change, it could change the operation. If there was an expansion request, let's say the 54 is what she's approved for currently with her employee ratio, but the building is large enough to actually expand to 75 under its current footprint, she would still have to get her state license approved, because she'd have to show that she's got the employees and everything else, so that would come back to us as well. If she wanted to do any kind of real operational adjustment, I'll say, in the sense of business hours that are different than what that state license allows. So, for instance, in our area, because of the 24-hour employment that occurs around here,
Yeah.
you know, nighttime, third shift workers, those kinds of folks, if that's an operation add-on, she will probably have to at least go through the state to verify what her license is, and if it accommodates that, then she's gonna have to show how she operates. So, again, with this type of business, we don't worry about the conditions quite as much because of that state license component. But most of it is usually around operational hours, intensity of the use. If she were to offer services as add-on values, I don't know the business well enough, but if she were to do things where it's outside of that indoor use and that play area, and all of a sudden we're hosting all kinds of events and activities that go beyond the realm of what the daycare is, if we get complaints from that, that could be a trigger for us to come back and reevaluate the conditional use permit. So as she's operating, she's going to want to be in touch with us as they come up with different ideas and different thoughts. What we're really looking at is the intensity of the use really growing or expanding beyond the original intent that the conditional use permit.
And the state has clearly their own regulatory body that.
Yeah,
and it sounds like that's one of the reasons why we're here.
And they get a fire inspection. The fire marshal has to come out and they have to inspect the building and take a look at it. And the fire marshal, on their inspections, I know enough about this to be dangerous. But the fire marshals can, if they find that there's something that's not in compliance with their requirements, they can shut the daycare down. They can block off portions of the building until corrections are made. There's a number of things that those folks can do. Hopefully, we're never in those situations at the end of the day. I don't think you want to be in any of those. So.
No one does. And so maybe just the last point of clarity, and I'm sorry if this simple question and it's already been answered, but looking at item number 1, and obviously looking at this item, and then back to the red box. So some of the first red box overrides what I believe is a very small portion of where this business will be.
Okay, so
Does that mean?
let's go back to the aerial. So
not that red box.
no, this red box, that red box that was,
That one.
that red box that was on the first slide there.
Yeah.
That is the property the conditional use permit would apply to. Okay? So it's the use of that, with this aerial in front of you, if you look at the white line that encompasses the parking lot and the 2 larger white structures, if you create that white line around it, the CUP is associated with that parcel only.
Okay.
Okay?
I just cleared everything
Yeah,
up.
that's all it is.
Thank you. That actually answered everything.
Okay.
I have no
Yeah, it's a little bit, it's a little bit confusing and it's unfolding because it's an unusual situation completely.
I'm done.
No questions.
And I'll remind the commission, if you wish to make this motion, you don't have to read the whole thing. You can certainly, at a certain point, say, as indicated. So if you get to the 4 conditions and you're okay
No.
with it.
No more questions from me.
All right, so since we don't have any more questions from the commissioners, I'd like to entertain a motion for this item.
I'll make the motion. After review of application 24-305-02, a conditional use permit for Sunny Steps Daycare at 17935 Moonlight Road, and staff report dated October 23rd, 2024, the Planning Commission recommends the governing body approve the conditional use permit application as proposed, providing the listed conditions are met.
I second that motion.
And that'd be 1 through 4 as shown on the slide.
I'm sorry,
Yep.
listed conditions 1 through 4 as shown.
I'll second that motion.
All right. So we got a motion made by Commissioner Berg and seconded by Commissioner Wondersmith. And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries 4-0.
And I'll just remind everybody and the applicant in particular, these two items will go before the governing body at their November 18th meeting. So the second meeting in November at 7 p.m. in these chambers is when the governing body will take these items up.
Thank you. All right, so next item on the regular agenda is the Plaza South Lot 1, Whataburger 24-304-06, the final development plan.
Good evening. The subject property is located along Gardner Road in a developing area that has had several other commercial applications over the past few years. Located to the north is Frontier Community Credit Union. The east lot is currently vacant, but it recently received approval for the Sano Medical Office Building. To the south is Groundhouse Coffee, and across the street, the property is vacant. There are overhead electric lines along the south side of the property, along with gravity and force main sanitary sewer lines. An 8-inch Kansas gas line is shown in yellow on the western side of the lot. The water line is located to the east across Vivian Street. There is a stormwater inlet in the northwest corner of the property. The property was rezoned to ACP-2 with an associated preliminary development plan and platted as part of the Plaza South development back in 2019. That PDP proposed a 6,600 square foot fast food restaurant with a drive-through and a single access point from Vivian Street. The final development plan is generally in conformance with the preliminary development plan. The proposal is for a 3,300 square foot restaurant with a drive-through. The final development plan meets all of the code standards with the exception of the requested deviations. Similarly to the medical office building to the east, the street trees along 188th Street were moved to other parts of the site so they would not interfere with the overhead electric lines. The landscaping includes a mix of shrubs along the outside edges of the pavement as a replacement for the trees. The building elevations meet the design and transparency requirements of the city and include masonry and metal with signage. The top rendering shows the northeast corner of the building, while the second rendering shows the building as it would be seen from the parking lot. There are 5 deviation requests. The first is to reduce the foundation planting bed depth. There are still plantings along the foundation, but the applicant did not want to push all of the parking area south into that utility easement. The second deviation request is to remove the street trees in the area with the overhead power lines. Deviation request number 3 is for additional parking. The maximum allowed by code is 30, and the applicant requests 38 parking spaces. Number 4 is for a reduction in the sidewalk in front of the primary entrance from 10 feet to 8 feet. Basically, they want to replace 2 feet of concrete while still allowing some room for foundation plantings. And the 5th request is for a 2-foot taller monument sign than the code would generally allow at the current setback. The applicant has proposed eliminating one of the 2 allowed monument signs that they would be allowed at this location to have one larger sign on the southwest corner of the site. Staff is supportive of all 5 deviation requests, and if you have specific questions, we can go more into depth about them. Staff recommends approval of the final development plan for Lot 1 of Plaza South with the conditions in the suggested motion. And if you have any questions, we are available to answer them as well.
Do we have the applicant?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Dalton Signer, civil engineer with Kimley Horn, the civil engineering consultant on this project. I'd be glad to take any questions.
I don't have any questions this time.
I don't have any questions for you. I do have some questions about this. This is, okay. I think this is for staff. I didn't ever see the preliminary plan, and I couldn't find it. Was this preliminary plan done as part of the Plaza South? And then this was, something was proposed to be put in, we just didn't know at that time what it was gonna be?
Right, so this graphic that Jesse showed in his presentation was the preliminary development plan for this parcel that was approved as part of the Plaza South development. So it would have been before, I think before almost all your terms that Plaza South came through. So the preliminary development plan really encompasses the new location of New Life Church, if you remember where that is, at 188th Street, from that parcel over to Gardner Road, and then from the power lines, those really tall transmission lines on the north, down to 188th Street. So that was fully done as a preliminary development plan, and you're correct. What happens at the preliminary stage is many times the developer is not aware of the specific user or the specific item that's coming in, but they do an estimate of these parcels and the sizes of the buildings and what they expect will happen to them. So when Jesse was showing this graphic, that's what he was referring to. The preliminary development plan for Plaza South for Lot 1 showed a fast food restaurant on this location. It actually was a bigger footprint, but as part of that preliminary development plan, there was a stormwater study and a traffic study that was all done with those items. At final development stage, we are looking for, is the proposal consistent with the parameters of the preliminary development stage, and then we're also adding details like the landscape plan and the architecture and the specific use requirements. So that's why this is not what I would call a literal approval that has to be exactly this way at final, but we're looking to see that it fits within those parameters. And if they would have come back to us, if this applicant through their final development plan would have come back to us and said, oh, by the way, we'd like an 8,000 square foot building and we want to have more pavement surface, they would have to supplement the stormwater study and things like that to show how they were accommodating those adjustments, and that would come before you. So as Bob indicated Jesse indicated on this one, in the parking scenario, our code has a maximum parking requirement. In this layout, you'll already see that you've got 32, 36, 46 spaces shown. Okay, so kind of in that parameter, while an official deviation wasn't granted, the layout was showing some parking beyond what's even being requested by the applicant. So they're asking for 38, which is a deviation from what our maximum would allow. So we want to formalize that deviation now because we're getting a final development plan with this, but it's within the parameters of what was approved by the preliminary development plan. So we're not seeing it. That's why it's easier for us to kind of support that, because the preliminary development plan was kind of showing a layout with much more parking than that. Some of this also has to do, you'll notice like the access points. So Jesse, if you want to go to the site plan for the actual Whataburger, you'll notice like the access point, it's a single access point on Vivian. That's something that was in line with the preliminary development plan, but the location position of it is a little bit different. It's a little bit wider, things like that, but it's within the parameters of what we're looking for. So that's what you're finding with the final development plans, is a lot of times now we're able to look at the refinement of what's being proposed. We look back at the stormwater study, we look back at the traffic study, we look back at the preliminary development plan, and we try to fit it within those kinds of parameters, also recognizing that there was no official deviations granted on some of this stuff. So that's why we have to formalize it at this point. So hopefully that, it's a long-winded explanation, but it's an excellent question, because this was something that was approved ahead of, I think, almost all four of you, before any of the four of you were here. So you would have probably never seen the full preliminary development plan. But we had the same situation when Taco Bell was approved a few months ago, in two properties north of this. Is that right, Jesse? So up there, the bank, the car wash, all of those have gone through the same kind of process here. And the medical office building, for that
Right.
matter.
Right, okay, thank you.
I do have this may be just more for my education. So I recall at least reading and obviously looking at what we did about the single entrance. Is that, other than just maybe the general landscape, is that typical? And by landscape, I'm not talking about shrubs, but what you are given as an engineer to design, is that typical to have?
Sure. Ideally, we would have more entrances.
Sure.
Frankly, just for better circulation, to keep cars coming in and out more efficiently. But in an effort to meet what was previously approved,
Understood.
and given the lack of frontage that is allowed to tie in this scenario, we stuck with one.
Yeah,
And
part in here too, the parcel size, I will say some of
Oh,
these
yeah.
parcel sizes, this one's not quite as difficult as the Taco Bell site because that was a split lot, so we were dealing with half a lot. Many of these, the hard part is getting all of it to work with the drive-throughs and everything else. So yes, usually 2 entrances is something that we look for, but the spacing requirements for access management off of the intersection of Gardner Road and 188th kind of precludes this property from having accesses on those 2 roads. Then when you look at Vivian and some of the other development that's occurring, trying to minimize some of those drives is a better scenario actually for traffic flow and circulation. I would tend to agree with the applicant's rep at this point that 2 accesses would be nice, but this is gonna have to do.
oh my goodness,
Yeah.
was not even looking to change. If anything, the real crux of the question was, no offense to Taco Bell and Culver's and anyone else I'm not mentioning, but I've never been to a Whataburger that didn't have 27 cars in a line.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah.
Looking at Vivian Road and I'm not, maybe this isn't more of a planning unique topic, but as we see more of these come through, how do you as an engineer plan for something as ridiculous as what I just said? Or do you, or can you?
Right, we do what we can, and that's why we're requesting the additional parking outside of the code, and you're seeing more of these double drive-throughs to add some extra queuing and things. So we're doing what we can. We're seeing a lot more drive-through traffic, but yeah, I mean it's a valid point. Specifically, as some of these larger franchises move into the metro, they have a large following, and you'll see some pretty big traffic loads.
Nothing like Whataburger. Again, no
Well,
offense to
it depends. Several of these operations, Culver's is one. If you go to some of those around the city too, they have what I call cult following. There's people that's where they're going. They're always going to go there. I think the one interesting aspect of Whataburger here, if I recall right, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe this is going to be a 24/7 operation. So they're going to be 24 hours operating, which is a little bit different than some of the other fast food places here. And so, that's also adding to the traffic loads at times, hopefully where we're not competing as much with other traffic for some of these other uses. So it's an element. This is a little bit different operation in that. What we have seen from most of these fast food chains is they're really going to the double queuing. They're trying to figure out ways to make it work. And they're also trying to get the smallest sites they can because there's a cost involved with land.
I understand it's almost an impossible metric and or question to ask. I'm just curious, like I said, as we see more and more of these, what are some of the things that engineers are doing? So thank you for doing that.
Right.
I have no other questions.
On a personal level, I'm really excited about Whataburger coming to
See, he's gonna
There we go.
be that in that line.
Excited enough to be in the drive-through line? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. My wife keep asking me, when you guys gonna see the Whataburger coming through? So I don't know. We're happy to see you guys coming to town. Can you share about the seating area? Do you know how big it's gonna be inside? I just don't.
How many seats internal to the building, you
Yeah,
said?
I mean, how many tables are you gonna have? Do you know how big it is gonna be? 'Cause I
Yeah,
know.
that's not something I know off the top of my head. I know it's part of the parking deviation request, however, so 75 seats is the proposed internal seating.
75.
And there will also be 3 outdoor seating tables, I believe. So that's part of the zoning requirement that they have an outdoor seating area.
Any idea when they're gonna break ground?
I don't know that that's nailed down yet. As soon as you let us.
Well, not us, but.
Well, in this particular case, for you all, as a final development plan, you're the final say on this. This versus being a recommendation to the governing body, this is the point where you have the approval authority on it.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Any other questions? All right, I would like to entertain a motion for this item.
I'll make that motion. After review of application 24-304-06, final development plan for Plaza South, Lot 1, Whataburger, and staff report dated October the 23rd, 2024, the Planning Commission approves the application as proposed, provided the following conditions are met. Item 1, the construction plans for any utilities, infrastructure, stormwater, or other public facilities shall meet all technical specifications, and public improvement plans shall be submitted and approved prior to issuance of a building permit. And item 2, approval of the deviations as presented in the staff report.
I'd second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion carries 4-0. All right, the next item on the agenda is the Gardner Municipal Airport 24-306-03 site plan. Staff presentation, please.
The Gardner Municipal Airport was annexed into the city in 1979 as part of Ordinance Number 1410 and is about 128 acres in size. It is zoned agricultural and is currently unplatted. The terminal area is located on the north side of the airport along West 175th Street and is comprised of the terminal building, aircraft maintenance hangars, fuel facilities, aircraft parking, and commercial use areas. The terminal building itself was originally built by the Navy in the 1940s and is outdated for today's airport needs. The affected area is about 1 acre in size. The site plan shows the existing terminal building will be demolished and a 4,400 square foot new terminal building constructed in its place. The World War II era hangar to the east will remain. The parking lot will be reconstructed and water retention and water quality features will also be added to the west of it. A paved access drive will be built along the north side of the site, connecting to the existing drive access to the east. Shown on screen is the landscape plan. One notable change when compared to other landscape plans you often see is that there are no new trees as part of it. The FAA generally discourages trees on airport property. Since the specific use standards for aviation facilities in our code has exemptions in section CC for street trees, parking lot trees, and all other open space trees, no deviation is needed. The building type is small civic, and the elevations show the facade will be constructed with a mix of brick and masonry with metal windows and metal awnings overhanging. There will also be 2 new freestanding canopies between the new terminal and the existing hangar leading to the runway. Staff recommends approval of the site plan for the new Gardner Municipal Airport Terminal building with the condition in the suggested motion. That condition is just to have the property platted since that wasn't done earlier.
I'll just add the Public Works Director is present also if you have questions regarding the project and items there. So he gets to represent the application as the airport manager.
All right, commissioners, you guys have any questions?
I have some very basic questions. You know, things within the community and or community type of events. Would this be a venue that may?
Yeah, so the proposed terminal facility actually includes kind of a large open community area in it that can be kind of divided up, kind of similar to what you might see at, say, the Senior Citizen Center over there, and would be available for use of the community.
Oh, that may be the only other question that's not important to the actual process. Is there some big grand opening plan?
Well, we first of all need to receive some funding from the FAA. So this plan is contingent really upon receiving a grant through the FAA's airport terminal program. If we receive that, we'll probably be able to build it. If we don't, it'll probably take a long time to raise some funds.
And Kellen, the grant is it a 90%? What was the percentage?
It's a 95%.
So it's
5%
FAA funded
local.
95%,
Yeah.
local funded
Yeah.
5%.
I remember something to this effect during the budget talks that we.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'd love to build it if we can.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
Yeah, I do have a question. So the existing building will be demolished?
That's correct. So the existing building is kind of a cobbled together group of buildings, some of them built along with the original hangar structure when the Navy was first operating it back in the 40s. Some of it added on later on. The majority of the existing facilities, it's about 4,200 square feet as opposed to the 4,400 square feet proposed facility. Of that 4,200 square feet, right now we're only using maybe a fifth of it. The rest of it is either in disrepair. We've had water intrusion, mold issues, and things like that. So the current facility is mostly unusable right now. To include, it's missing a lot of the required features for pilot access and things like that. We don't even have a flight planning area in the facility right now. And so in order to make it more usable for airport users as well as the community, that's the focus of the way it was designed.
And I think just for reiteration, the hangar building though, the original hangar building that's there, which is the kind of arched or domed building there, that is remaining.
Correct.
Just to clarify.
That one itself is somewhat of a historical building, and elements of the new building, the metal panels and things are meant to kind of tie to that building.
Well, that was kind of the gist of my question is, right now, the operations are going on. Is that building going to stay until the new one is built and then be demolished?
It will stay until it needs to be demolished so that we can build, because the new facility will go on top of the existing footprint.
So what happens to the day-to-day operations during the demolition and construction?
We will likely have to come up with some kind of rental space for the flight planning piece. It's not currently occupied by any personnel on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, thank you. That's the only question I have.
So the airport is not being used for anything?
No, the airport is used quite frequently. It's just not staffed constantly. We have a part-time maintenance worker who does work out of there. Sometimes there's a little bit of space for pilot rest and relaxation, but the new facility would include significantly improved facilities for pilots, whether they be operating off the airfield or transient. Somebody flies in, there'll be a pilot shower and bathroom area. There'll be a flight planning area, a rest area for pilots, as well as the community kind of facility areas that were mentioned before.
I think part of it also is, as we've talked, as Kellen and I have talked about this, most of the local operators have hangar rented spaces, so that's where they kind of base themselves out of, and most of their activity. There is significant use, don't get us wrong, the airport is used pretty frequently, I think even to a surprising level for most people, but the fact of the matter is most of the local based people have hangar space, that's where they're doing their flight planning, that's where they're getting their rest, that's where they do their mechanical repairs, that's where they handle most of the activity. It's really for the people that are coming, flying in, whether it's for a day, whether it's just simply this was a airport that they wanted to land at. And some people go, well, why would you come here? One of the reasons is this is one of the better grass strips that's available. I think in the state even is what's been indicated. We have one of the better grass landing strips, and so there are people who come specifically to do that. There's a whole host of different items that you'd be kind of surprised that generate this activity, even with the ultralights and other things that happen out there.
And it would also provide an opportunity for us to attract some of the kind of airport or aeronautical related events that the state airports board puts on, things like fly-ins, opportunities for even having aviation-related classes and things like that in the open spaces within the terminal are things we've talked about in order to kind of expand aviation awareness and use within the community.
So 95% funding is going to be a lot of fun and potential revenue opportunities.
Correct.
Sounds pretty good.
Try. And a better facility for a better reflection for the community. That's
Absolutely.
essentially what we're into.
So the last question, can you share how much would be the total of this project?
Cost-wise? I believe right now the overall budget, including all of the design, construction-related services and things, is somewhere around $4 million.
Gardner would come up with funds.
And the airport itself would come up with the matching funds. The city has no actual funding involved.
So I think that equates to somewhere around 200,000 or something.
Correct.
On the local side out of a $4 million budget. That's can't complain too much about that.
Not at all, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Any more questions? All right, since we don't have any more questions, I'd like to entertain a motion.
To close the public part or to close?
There was no
There was
public
no
hearing
public-
on
okay.
this one.
Yeah, I'll move to.
Okay.
So after review of application 24-30603, site plan for Gardner Municipal Airport and staff report dated October 23, 2024, the Planning Commission approves the application as proposed, provided the following condition is met. Administrative Plat 24-302-14 must be signed and recorded prior to the issuance of building permit.
Second.
All right, the motion was made by Commissioner Wonderschmidt and second by Burr. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries 4-0. Now we have the last one, 2025 Planning Commission meeting schedule.
Hopefully there's not too many questions on this. Dave Napa, Community Development Director. Item 5, as I mentioned earlier, was added by staff because our Planning Commission agenda for November right now is no other items, so we felt we needed to push this up further. This is an annual event where we give you the opportunity to see what the schedule is, and you, by your bylaws and by ordinance, need to approve that schedule. So in the staff report, you see the background that refer to the public or to the bylaws as well as to the code. And supporting this item is a draft resolution, Planning Commission -24-01. So this will require a motion regarding the approval of the schedule. Just very quickly, as you know, the 3 columns, I want to make sure everybody's clear. This is primarily for anyone who may be viewing this. The application deadline, we follow a deadline process. It's typically the first Monday of every month unless there's a holiday or some kind of interference there, or we're adjusting the schedule for a holiday. So what you'll see noted in that first column is primarily the first Monday of every month. But with Labor Day in September, you'll see that that's one of the changes that goes to the Tuesday, so the day after the holiday. In regard to planning commissions and BZA, as you, I hope, remember, you serve as the planning commission as well as the Board of Zoning Adjustment. We don't call the Board of Zoning Adjustment proceedings together very often because they usually involve variances, which are very difficult for applicants to meet those criteria. So generally, you won't see us calling that agenda together, but because you serve as both, we can do those on the same nights. Your meetings are scheduled for the fourth Monday of every month, again, unless we have a conflict with a holiday. So you'll note in May, on May 27th, we're on a Tuesday because of Memorial Day on the Monday this year. And then if you look at November and December, we try to have those meetings the week ahead of Thanksgiving and the week ahead of Christmas if we're going to have those meetings. So those are noted in that calendar schedule. And then most of the items that are going to the city council with your recommendation are generally heard at their second meeting on the next month after your planning commission meeting. That is because there's a protest period that's required by state law that we meet between your recommendation and the governing body consideration and actual decision making there. So in order to do that, this has to go to their second meeting in those months. You can't just put them into the first meeting slot. So what you see there is generally the third Monday of every month is when most of the items that you're forwarding on to the governing body, that's when they will occur. Again, making adjustments for the holidays, and you'll see the one in particular in January of 2026, that's Martin Luther King Day, so it's moved to a Tuesday because we are closed on that Monday. So that is the summary of the calendar and schedule. I'll entertain any questions, and what we're looking from you all for is a recommendation by the Planning Commission to approve the schedule, or actually adopt the resolution PC 24-01. So if there's any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer those for you.
No questions for me.
I'll make a motion to approve. Staff recommends that the planning commission, wait, is that it?
Yeah, all you need to do is basically make a motion saying that we are adopting,
discussed it,
PC 24-1. Sorry, I didn't have time to put
that's
in
fine.
the motion.
No,
So
that's okay. So I'd like to make a motion to identify the discussion and approval that the planning commission take for resolution PC-24-01.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the motion to approve the 2025 Planning Commission meeting schedule carries 4-0.
I'll just stand up here because there's a couple items I want to make sure I bring to your attention very quickly. As I noted, at this point in time, we do not have anything scheduled for the November Planning Commission, which is good news for you all, which is because of the holiday and things like that. We don't have to worry about conflicts with holiday schedules and that. We'll confirm that generally a week or so ahead of time. So if something does creep on that needs to be considered, we'll let you know. We'll get you something out. But right now, I would say we are not going to have a meeting in November the way it looks at this point in time. We will have a meeting in December. So that December 17th, it's a Tuesday. So mark the calendars on that one. It's one that we're doing right now. We have a major item that'll be on that agenda that's really kind of driving that agenda. So it's having to do with the northeast corner of 175th and Clare and a development that's being proposed there. So that's currently under staff review. So anticipate that unless there's something in the schedule that occurs, because that property has to go through some other things with annexation and some other elements. So there's some timing elements to that. But right now, it looks like we will be meeting in December. The other thing I wanted to do, oh, there you are. I wondered where you went. You'll see a couple new faces here. So just so, Well, I know, I saw her walking around earlier, but I missed her over here. So Shauna is our customer service rep. She is going to be the person that you will see at the front counter and also taking phone calls and kind of a port of entry even for some of our department emails that come in through the planning and building side of things, as well as what Jenny is doing as the administrative assistant for the department. Shauna is technically working for both Public Works and for our department, so we have that one front counter space, but she is now our customer service rep. We're glad to have her in that role. We are working now to kind of identify who does what and how these things all get funneled through Jenny on the administrative side, but now we actually have some organizational depth to handle administrative items and various clerical and customer service items that have been falling in the professional realm, which we really need those professionals working on other items as far as prepping staff reports, doing things like that. Then the second person that I want to introduce is Maggie Brewster, and I hesitated on the last name because I know her by her original name, so it's kind of unusual. Maggie has, actually this is her first day with us. She is the deputy director for the department. So again, we're building some organizational depth within the department to handle some of the planning that's coming through. She will also be engaged in about every aspect of the department. As you all may or may not be aware of, we're going to be taking on some economic development responsibilities that Southwest Johnson County Economic Development Council was doing before they shut the door there. So we're incorporating some of that. So that's kind of another reason we're expanding some of this. And I'm hoping to take advantage a little bit of Bob's experience in economic development. So his role is going to be changing. You'll still see him here because I'm going to make him come to every single meeting I possibly can and make his life miserable. So I'm going to find ways for him to have to put in extra hours now, just because I like to. Anyway, but Bob, we're going to try to do some things where Maggie, myself, Bob, probably will be splitting some of those functions. This also opens up the opportunity to start looking at some of our long-range planning activities. We've been pretty much in the mode of maintaining the current plan cycle, which is really the things you're seeing with rezoning requests, development requests, things like this. This gives us a little bit of staff capacity now to do some things like looking at the comp plan and the codes and doing some updates and things that'll be necessary there. So that's a good thing for us as a department. It's a good thing for the community as we're growing to kind of get those things so that they're up to date and operating right. So I wanted to make sure I introduced those two people to you tonight. Say hi to them. You'll see their lovely faces multiple times. As we move along, don't be surprised as you see Maggie more and more engaged in things as we go forward. But that's where we're heading as a department, so we're looking forward to it. Tonight, we knew we had a few people, very last minute things, just so you know, primarily illnesses that popped up. I know for Commissioner Juniman, him and his family, he emailed earlier today and contacted Commissioner Sosa to say, hey, we're down sick. This wasn't planned. He missed work and stuff. Commissioner Cooper, I know has a family health issue that she's attending to. And then we had an email also from Commissioner Mader that she was not feeling well and missed some work and stuff. So it's just the way we are. You guys did a great job. I appreciate Commissioner Sosa filling in. This is the first time he's ever had to run a meeting. So while it was one of those things where it's a learning process, I think we did a good job to get through the agenda. So thank you for that tonight as well. So that's all I have as staff comments.
Me earlier because I was panicking.
Well, it didn't show tonight.
Appreciate it.
And it did really good. So, with that, unless you have questions for the staff, we can certainly entertain a motion to adjourn.
All right, so can I get a motion to adjourn?
Make that motion.
Second.
All right, a motion to adjourn by Combs and second by Berg. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Meeting is adjourned.